groups. And so you can bring any kind of, if you want to put a banner, you don't have to. But what we ask is that you show up so that the folks in our church that are not a part of a small group, or maybe even those that are in a small group, they want to look for maybe a Sunday small group, could come and find more out about your group.
We've been out of pocket a lot this summer. I think I left my brain in Utah.
9,000 miles, huh? That's what Dan was telling me.
6,700. That's not stretch. So we're supposed to have a visual display.
You can,
And
that's
what
optional.
What is the time?
The time is right after the first service, and then right before the second service.
So
And
during that period of time.
yes, and then after the second service as well, if you got some stragglers that want to come and they want to check it out. Yes.
I can't be the only person in here who didn't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions about the expo or small group? Yes, Jeff.
I just wanted to say, I don't want the word college to scare anyone away. I'm going to gear that class to any level, and I will encourage questions. I don't care how long it takes to get through topics. I'm going to try to answer questions, and so it'll be, I think, suitable for 9th grade up through adult.
Okay.
So the
It's
Bible
not a
is
college
what
course,
years?
guys. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
What time is your class, Joe?
In both, he's going to have it in
I'm
both
gonna offer
slots.
Whenever.
Yeah.
Whenever it needs
Yeah.
to be offered during Sunday school.
I think the reason I said college is because Jeff, he's going to focus, the class is not going to be like a traditional small group. Jeff is going to be the teacher. You're going to be teaching within that, is that correct?
Right.
So we're even going to have a blackboard for you. So you can even, you can write stuff on the blackboard. But it's going to be different in the sense that it's not going to be like we're studying this book and we're all going to talk, but Jeff more wants to run it as a classroom, right? So that's why I said college. But don't be intimidated by that. If you've ever been interested in a Bible survey course, if you want to know more about the Bible, come and check it out. I think, his material, I've seen it. It looks really, really exciting. It looks like a Bible survey course that you would take in college. But
9:15 or at 10:40?
both.
It's
It's
gonna be
both. And it will be
Whatever needs to be.
downstairs. It will be downstairs in room 102. So I don't know if you guys know where room 102 is at, with the chalkboard and everything. Okay.
What's a chalkboard?
There's a chalkboard down there. What did you say?
What's a chalkboard?
What is a chalkboard? Exactly. And they're still writing on that from like 3 years ago too. So there's some history down there right now before you wipe it clean. Yeah. Any other questions about small groups or adult discipleship? Nope. All right. Melissa. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little update on things that are happening in children's and youth ministry. We are continuing with the concurrent worship and Sunday school model. We're calling Sunday school, if you hear the word JAM around, it stands for Jesus and Me. We're changing it for a number of reasons. We kind of know what it means, but again, with this idea of how do we kind of program and name things with unchurched people in mind. Sunday school doesn't sound all that inviting to most kids anymore. We know what it means. We know it can be amazing. But we're going to continue to use the language that we'd like to invite you to Sunday morning jam. We're going to have sessions at 9:15 and 10:40. During those sessions through the Sunday morning, we'll be having 2 sessions for nursery. We'll have programming. We had a meeting with teachers and parents and session leaders in May to evaluate last year's program. And overall, we had really positive feedback from that. So we are continuing with that model this year. We have made adjustments based on recommendations and feedback from teachers and parents about the age groupings. So nursery will be going up to a higher grade this year. We will have little flock and preschool. We will be doing kindergarten and first grade will be grouped together, second and third will be grouped together, fourth and fifth will be grouped together. And we'll be offering a class that includes 6th through 12th while it's a huge age span, the way we're going to address that, and we don't know how many students are actually going to attend. We have 2 teachers for the morning class for that. They'll do an opening session that presents the scripture and the content for the lesson, and then split to middle school and high school for in-depth discussion and application. That will be running. We're also trying to get a class going for the 6th through 8th grade group during the second session. We're still looking for teachers for that, so if there are some of you who like that 6th through 8th grade window and would like to do that, talk to me. High schoolers who are interested in attending a class during the second session, we're going to direct to Jeremy Brown's class, which is kind of an apologetics thing, and for students like that, we think it would be a good fit. He works with our youth too, so it's a good bridge. So there's intentionality around that as well. One of the things that Jim talked about was the idea of like, what are we doing to evaluate our programs and things like that. And I wanted to let you know that when we had our meeting in May and when we started this, we were asked as children's and youth and families ministry to evaluate our program based on a few things. And so the questions were this: have we grown in the number of children participating consistently? We average that to be 4 out of 6 weeks, most weeks on Sunday mornings. And based on our attendance, we have a new software program that helps us track that. And so we were able to look back and say, yes, overall class attendance was very consistent this year in a way that, anecdotally, we're not sure. We don't have statistical evidence from previous years to look back on. But based on that measure this year, the number of kids we were seeing and the frequency with which we were seeing them was really good. That was encouraging. We were asked whether we developed more volunteers and leaders through the model. And just through last year's program alone, we had 20 new people who'd never connected to children's ministries in the morning plug in and start getting involved. From that, we saw a number of people bridge into helping with programming like Vacation Bible School. And that's been really exciting too. And from that experience, we are welcoming about another 8 new people coming in this fall to be working with children's ministries, which is really exciting. Also exciting is that we've had, since Vacation Bible School, this measure coming across from that too, we've since been seeing about 4 new families coming in and participating regularly this summer, not just even like once a month. We've seen them multiple weeks through the summer, so we've been welcoming 4 new families with great consistency coming in by being able to offer Summer Jam this year. So we're glad we made that decision to do that. Special thanks to any of you who've jumped in and helped volunteering for that. And that was one of the other measures. Have new families connected to our church through this new model, this concurrent worship and Sunday school model. And specifically we're asked, have we been able to integrate, not just like see them coming regularly, integrate 5 new families, present 4 out of 6 weeks, and taking the next step to serve and learn. And yes, we did see that. We had, just looking over my notes because I want to make sure I had it right. We had at least 9 families integrate. So what that means, for example, is a family whose children were coming to Jam, who was attending on Sunday morning. Those parents either plugged into a new Covenant Partner class or began volunteering with children's ministries or helped out as a Vacation Bible School volunteer. So they've taken the next step into integrating into the life of our church. And then the last thing we were asked to evaluate was our children learning about the gospel and the love of God in Jesus Christ in biblical, fun, age-appropriate, and meaningful ways. And to the best of our ability last year, I think we can say yes. We actually did little surveys with kids and asked them, like, what are some of your favorite memories? What's something that you learned this year? We asked teachers, we asked parents. So surveys was one of our measures as well. And again, for the most part, while we had good feedback on things to adjust and tweak, like age groups and things along those lines, we're addressing those. But overall, in terms of content, people were pretty pleased with the experience that their kids had. We had a lot of kids who look forward to coming in and bringing friends. That's also an exciting thing for us to see. In terms of youth ministry, last year we made a shift from doing weekly Sunday night youth group. That's been a long tradition here at East Main. We used to do middle school in the early evening, like 3 to 5, and then high school from about 5:30 to 8. And what we had found over the last few years is that our attendance on Sunday evenings was declining. There's there's a number of reasons for that. When I would follow up with students about that, we get feedback on sports. That's the only night I'm home. It's family time. I'm too tired. It wasn't so much that they didn't care, it's just that this seemed to be the only night for many students that we had a connection with, that on average, for example, for high school, really no matter what week it was, we were averaging about 6 students, and middle school was probably averaging about 12. And so we looked at that and said, without the consistency of the same students showing up week to week, it made it really hard to do in-depth discipleship with them. So we made the shift last year that we moved to having once a month large group gatherings, one for high school, one for middle school. We moved to a small group model. So we invited students in those age groups. So having a middle school boys small group, a middle school girls small group, a high school girls small group, and a high school guys small group. I have to say the most successful one, you may be surprised, was the middle school boys small group. They had a weekly average attendance of 13, sometimes 15. And then a lot of ways that represented a win. And what I mean by that is some of the same kids that we would have seen on Sunday night, maybe half of those, continue to carry over into our small group. However, at least 4 of the boys who participated almost weekly in the small group in a home are boys we never saw on Sunday night at youth group. But the fact that it was midweek in one of their homes and they could just easily bring friends to it changed the dynamic. So in that way, we were able to integrate some new students with consistency in a way that we hadn't been able to do with their Sunday night programs. The high school girls and high school boys really struggled. The high school girls, not so much. We were able to have a small group that was pretty consistent. We're looking to continue with that model. And the middle school girls had pretty good consistency, but small numbers of about 4 or 5. When you look at the total of kids who participate on a regular basis, it's actually more than we had coming consistently on Sunday nights for large groups overall. So while we're still in this transition period, we're still looking to carry on with that model and continue to see if that will be an effective way for us to meet with that. The truth is we're in a culture where teens are being pulled in a lot of directions, and the demands of sports, and we have a lot of student athletes in our church, just continue to increase in demand. So we're struggling, like I'm working to figure out how to work with parents, to figure out what it looks like for us to be working with them, to disciple them, and that's one of the things I'm looking forward to doing this fall. Now that Jacqueline and Luke are kind of more established in their roles, is being able to spend a little bit more time and energy focusing on how can I start connecting with parents, supporting, equipping, resourcing them in their primary role of being disciplers of their children, with the church as being a support place for that. So I talked with Eric a little bit about some opportunities and ways that we'll be doing that, ways that we'll be connecting more through technology and social media with parents this coming year. But overall, excited and look forward to another great year, looking forward to welcoming new families. And I think what we said at this meeting in May, we can't be sure whether it's the model itself that's bearing the fruit, but I can say in this role and over the past year, we've seen God work through the model we put in place and has more fruit in our midst through that. So I continue to find that a great source of encouragement as we continue to navigate change as a church. I hope you'll continue to find that a source of encouragement as well. Thank you. Yes, Martha.
I just have a question about mission trips with the high school.
Yeah,
and those-
absolutely.
I wonder what the numbers are, because it seems to me you get a lot of kids going. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this year our high school mission trip, we had, I believe, 16 high school students. We had 2 college students, 1 recent college grad, and about 5 adults. So we ended up being about a team of 24. And we had a great year. We've talked with Bill about doing the presentation to share a little bit more about that experience. For those of you who don't know, our high school team goes and serves with Urban Promise in Wilmington, Delaware every year. We split our time supporting their inner city day camps and then also doing a labor project for the ministry in the afternoon. Our middle school students, we had a group of 15 who went this year, I believe, 3 adults and 12 students, and we went down to the Pittsburgh project and we worked there. We were split into 2 teams for the week, so that meant we worked on 2 different homes in the city, and I actually split us by gender, so we had all the girls in one team and all the guys in another team. And with the girls' team, we ended up doing a drywalling project for a woman's basement and hauling out a lot of trash that was decaying in it. And the guys were doing similar projects, a variety of different things at an elderly homeowner's home. So we do look forward to sharing more stories about that with you. We're in process. Realize that's a growing point that we've been doing that. We've tried some different things, but we're going to try and incorporate that into a worship service so that people get a better picture of that piece of what's been happening as well. Thanks, Martha. Any other questions? Yes, Ruth.
Could you comment on the change of Bible school to the evening?
Oh, yes, okay. One of the other significant changes was that we did move our vacation Bible school from the morning to the evening, and Ruth was asking what the reason, the rationale behind that was. There were a few. One, for the past few years, it has been extremely difficult for those in leadership for that program to secure the right number of volunteers to run a program at that time of day. We've had a lot of, while we do have a dedicated core of people who are available during that time, it is not the number of people that we need to be available to fulfill safety requirements in terms of the idea of 2 adults, how many people you need to run a station, and things like that. So with that in mind, and that being the primary thing, we really looked at what would it look like for us to do it in the evening with the primary task of what would it look like for us to engage new volunteers and more volunteers. And that was a huge shift because once we announced that this year, we actually had more volunteers than we needed for the program this year, which was good because we found places to plug people in, particularly new people, and it worked out. Second, like kind of a subset of that, most of the time what happens is, and again, it's certainly not everyone, but primarily women tend to be the ones running programs for children, and there's lots of reasons for that. But we were also hoping that our children would be exposed to men in leadership with children's programming. And by switching it to the evening, a lot more dads who had expressed an interest in sometimes helping but couldn't because of working hours were able to jump in. And so it was really great this year for kids to see dads running around, father figures, men, goofing off with them, giving them high fives when they came in, being a part of that program. And so primarily for volunteer sake, how can we run an excellent program but have the staffing that we need was the primary reason for that. And we found that to be a success. I would say also in conversation with Phil, our goal was not necessarily what is our just number. One of the realities of Grove City, if you're not aware of, is that we affectionately call it Vacation Bible School hopping. So there are families who kind of just strategically involve their kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. But our goal is kind of like the block party. Where are we going to meet some kids who wouldn't have showed up otherwise? Kids who are already in churches, who have a church home. When we looked at who attended this year, I could name 20 kids that weren't here this year, but that I know are definitely plugged in with other churches. And we did have other kids showing up that we had never seen before and new families. And like I said, we have 4 new families with a total of almost 10 kids who've come in through the Vacation Bible School program that we did this year, who've plugged in and stayed. So again, I don't know what that seemed to have worked better for our church in terms of the volunteers that we needed to run what we needed to run this year. Any other questions? Yes.
When does the new JAM program begin?
The new JAM program was going to kick off on September 8th. Any others? Okay, thank you.
Thank you much. And as I hope you see too, that children's and youth ministry has a lot to do with our efforts to reach beyond our walls. But I want to harken back to when Eric was up here. I think sometimes we think of small groups as being, oh, that's more about us. That's more about nurturing us. And they are. It's about building us up as disciples. But I would hope to see that small groups could become entry points for people in the life of discipleship as well. There are some folks who again, it's hard to put yourself, you got to try to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's not real familiar with church. Walking in a building like that is really intimidating It doesn't feel that way to us because we're used to it, but it can be. Whereas, walking into the group that's meeting in your house, that's a little different, totally different dynamic. So we're hoping that even our small groups can become entry points for people into the life of faith as well. I'm going to refrain from sharing what I was going to about something programmatic that I'm going to be about, because I'll be sharing that a little bit next week and beyond. But I would like now to let Jim Dixon talk to us a little bit about some structural things, because you have to start with your mission and vision. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? Then that trickles into your programs, the kind of things we've just been talking about, what you're doing, the programmatic life of your church. But also, it's affected by your structure, by how you organize yourselves to do ministry. And that even comes down to our bylaws. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is how we're going to have some proposed revisions to our bylaws. And Jim is going to give kind of introduction to that. So, Jim.
Thank you, Bill.
This thing,
Right.
go to your slides. Yeah, I'm going to take it. Yep.
I know this is the part that you've all been waiting for. Bylaws. Woo! That's about as fun as getting a tooth pulled, I understand. But I'm here to give you a little Novocaine, so make it go a little easier. But first, as I get started, I want to give a lot of credit to Bonnie Schaefer, who has really been the workhorse on this whole process. She's had a lot of experience in working in organizations and developing bylaws. And she worked with Ken Carson as well, and I came onto that team